Welcome back to Writing Done Right. Today we're going to have a look at the application Audacity, which you can use to manipulate all of your different sound files. So you're going to need sound files if you're doing audiobooks, videos, podcasts, any of that type of stuff, all good things in the author world and community. So we're going to talk about this application on the computer, but we're going to come back with a few introductory comments right after this. All right, so Audacity is open source and cross-platform, meaning if you're using Windows, Mac, or Linux, you can install Audacity on your computer. You also are going to want to install a few plugins, which are also free and open source. The reason you need the plugins, there's a few of them that it does not contain out of the box, those being the RMS Normalize, which will allow you to normalize the file based on the root mean square of the file. That's actually important because it's required to be within a certain range on any of your audiobook distribution platforms. You also are going to want a limiter and a certain type of roll-off speech, which the roll-off speech is there. I think the limiter may be there. There's one other package. I forget what it is, but we'll have a look at it when we actually go to the computer and I have them all installed. But the other thing you want is you want what's called the ACX checker, because when you are distributing audiobook files to the distributors, they have to meet very certain requirements. How loud is the file? What's the basement of the file? What's the average of the file? These are all things that you have to have. ACX checker will actually look at the file and make sure that it meets those requirements, so you don't have any guesses. You run it through that checker. Once it passes that checker, you're good to go. So that is an excellent thing. Now, it's called ACX checker, but it's all the same requirements for all of the different audiobook distributors out there. So just do that. So we're going to go ahead and just do just a very brief overview of this. We're not getting into all of the nitty gritty. We're just going to give you make you comfortable with the workspace inside of Audacity. So let's head on over to the computer. Okay, so now onto the computer. You can see we've landed here on the Audacity's webpage. So it is audacityteam.org. Head on over to the download button, grab your Windows, Mac, Linux, grab your different sources. There's a list of plugins here as well. So just go ahead and download it, install it for whatever your system happens to be. Of course, I'm running this on Linux Mint 18.3. I'm running on Linux Mint 18.3. So I did want to have a brief look at our plugins before we actually dive on in. So to install plugins on Audacity, you're going to need to drop them into the plugins folder. So on over here, we have the information on Windows. We're going to drop them into the program files /Audacity, and there's a plugins folder. On Mac OS, you go into your library applications, support, Audacity, and plugins. And on Linux, there's various locations. I have mine under usr/share/Audacity. So that's kind of what you do. So you drop the plugins there, and then you need to actually activate them. So let's go ahead and talk about how to activate plugins before we do the whole overview of Audacity itself. See, the application is here. And if we head on over to the Tools menu and we look down at our Add Remove Plugins, you can see here is the various plugins. So I have these installed on the whole computer, but I've never actually used Audacity on this particular user account. So it does register as new and therefore not enabled. So you can see all these state new. These are just some basic things put in. I don't need most of these, but I do need the ACX check. So you can see where I'm installing these two USR Share Audacity plugins, and then this is where it is. So we're going to click the enabled on that. The only other one that we do need to make this work is we need RMS Normalize. So we have the RMS here and we have the RMS Normalize here. I'm actually just going to go ahead and install both of these. I think the only one we need is the Normalize for now. There's some other things there. I'm not going to bother with those unless I absolutely need them. I'm just going to leave the other ones in that state. All right, so now our plugins are installed. After they are installed, now if I head to my Analyze menu, I see I now have an ACX check option. This is because what it does is to upload an audiobook, and it doesn't have to just be ACX. It's ACX, it's Findaway. All the places where you're going to update or upload an audiobook to requires the same requirements, which I believe is, don't quote me exactly, I think it's like 3.5 max peak volume, an average of about, I think it's an average of between 28 and 23 RMS, and a floor of minus 60 dB. I think that's what they are, but we'll actually play with that plugin in a second here, and we'll be able to see. So once we have landed here, you can create a new file. You can open a file. You can also drag and drop things onto it. You can save projects, which saves the Audacity file. The export is where you're going to save it as your different options, whether MP3 or WAV, OGG. So there's a variety of different things. You can also import things as well. What I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and drop the intro for this video that we just saw, and this is kind of what it looks like. So if I go ahead and hit the play button here. Welcome back to Writing Done Right. So you can kind of see what was there. Now, I don't always master the audio files on my video. It just depends on my setup and if there's any errors. So since I have a pretty good professional setup on my camera, I don't generally need to do this. Where I do actually need to go in and actually edit the audio file of a video is on one of my other channels where I do a lot of outdoor stuff. I might pick up a lot of background noise. Maybe there's a bunch of crickets in the in there, or maybe I film it by a stream for the cool effects. And I can actually use Audacity here, strip out the background noise of the crickling stream and leave just me talking. And I have a video on one of my other channels about that. And then you just export the audio, re-import the audio over the video, and it's just sync up the audio. What we're going to actually show you here is, first thing we're actually going to do is I'm just going to run this ACX check. So we actually do need to copy the whole wave before running the ACX check. So I just held my Control A. So you can see here it whines that it pretty much does not meet it. So you can see that the max dB is at 0.2, but it exceeds the -3. You can see my RMS level is minus 17.4, which exceeds the -18. The noise floor actually passes. And the reason my noise floor is going to pass is because, again, my microphone setup is very professional. So I don't pick up a lot of background setups here. So it does tell us a lot of the averages and basically says, yeah, this thing fails. So whatever. Anyway. Let's go ahead and walk through the application itself. So over here, we have a variety of different forms and effects. So we can see the waveform. We can see what the waveform average RMS happens to be. We can see a spectrogram. So there's a lot of cool stuff that we can actually see as far as different settings here. You do have the option over here. You can split the stereo into 2 mono tracks. You can swap the stereo channels, make the left right, the right left. You can actually come up under your tracks menu up here, and you can down mix the stereo line into mono. That's actually a good feature. When you're doing an audiobook, you either need to have all your tracks either have to be stereo or all your tracks have to be mono. And in reality, most cases, you probably just want to downsample them to mono. They're going to be smaller file sizes, easier to work with, but I don't do that until the very last step. Okay, we also have, if for some reason you need to come in and make some adjustments if you don't like how the sound is. So let's just go ahead and hit all. You have a variety of different effects over here. So we can amplify it. We can do a lot of different things. So one thing you might want to do is mess around with the equalization. So inside of your equalization, we have a lot of varieties here. So if you want to do a bass boost, we can preview what that sounds like. So welcome back to Writing Done Right. Today we're going to have... Okay, so that just kind of increases the amount of bass, and we can actually manipulate this. It'll probably sound bad, but let's see what that looks like. Welcome back to Writing Done Right. So you can see that some of these things will definitely impact things. You can make it sound like a walkie-talkie. Welcome back to Writing Done Right. So these are all different effects that you might use inside of like video production or things. Probably not as much in doing your audiobooks. But the one thing you do want to do is a low cutoff for speech around 5,000. This is about what you want to do to run audiobooks. What this is going to do is it's going to get rid of some of the higher end frequencies here. It'll just give it just a little bit better. So let me preview that real quick. Welcome back to Writing Done Right. You can't tell a whole lot of it like just on the bass surface. If you were wearing headphones and you actually were listening to the audio itself, it does bring a little bit better feel to it. So that's one of the effects you want to have. But you can do anything from bass boosts, treble boosts, and then, telephones, walkie-talkies. And there's other things in here as well. So you can go ahead and play around with different settings, different options for that. Okay, so we've already actually run there. There's echoes. You can actually look around at what's in here. So I actually use the noise reduction when I want to get rid of like stream noises and things. Again, I have a whole video on that on my other channel. If I think of it, I'll go ahead and link it down below so you can actually see that. Then there's a variety of just other things you can do. Now we added the RMS plugin here. So the RMS Normalize is one of the plugins that you're going to want to use. So when you're running this, we want to set our basement level at what we want. Now, the limit is about -18 to -23, I believe. I find if I generally just set this and I just keep mine at about a -22, let it run, you'll see how it adjusted the waveform there. And then there's one other effect. And if we want to come over here and we want to find the limiter. So the limiter, what this is going to do is it's going to say what is the upper cap, the upper limit to what this happens to be. Since -3 is actually what the limit is, I actually dropped this to -3.5. So again, remember this is a negative scale, so it's up to 3. -3.5 is lower on the list than -3. So run this. Now with the whole thing set, we've adjusted the RMS down to be a normalized level. We've adjusted the limiter. Now it should pass the ACX check. There might still be a couple things. Every now and again I have to come in here, particularly if it's a shorter WAV file like this one. I might actually need to come in here and maybe tweak up the RMS a little bit higher or a little bit lower. But let's go ahead and run the check, see what it says. So again, this is what we said. So now it says we've passed, we've passed, we've passed. It gives us the data on our floor, gives us all of our assets. So this is giving us for 2 channels. The right channel meets requirements, left channel meets requirements. So this now meets requirements. Now, if I wanted to, I could go ahead and mix this down to mono. And if I rerun the ACX check on mono, you'll see it only gives us a single mono track. Still passes everything. I'm just going to go ahead and undo the file there. Okay, so there is just a little bit. So if you wanted to add extra tracks, so like one thing I do for podcasts is I might add an outro. So that's actually not on this system, but I can, since it's Linux, I can go over and actually grab my output audio. So here's my audio output. So I just literally just drop that in over there. You can just drag and drop stuff right onto it. Holding the control button, scroll the mouse wheel down, it will zoom it in and out a little bit like that. So that's kind of how I'm doing that automatically. So I just want to make it a little bit smaller there. And then up here in our tools, of course, we can play, stop, you know what these ones do over here. Of course, our record will allow us to record from whatever our setting is. So here is our microphone settings over here. Here is our speaker settings over here. So you can do all those. But over here, this guy here selects. Okay, this guy here will actually pinpoint out different areas and cause some changes there. I don't actually want to mess with any of that. So good. It looks like I got rid of my audio file. I undid one line too many. All right, let's go back to this guy here. Over here we have just the ability. Now what this is actually going to do is we can actually edit. We can't edit it here. We have to zoom way in where you can kind of see dots, and you can actually manually edit your WAV files like this, which is actually going to do some really funny things. But you can actually, that's how detailed this thing gets. There's just so many things to do. Okay. What we're going to use here is make sure we have this arrow, dual arrow. What this allows us to do is drag waveform. So I'm just going to literally copy it over there, just delete the bottom track. And now this will actually add my podcast outro. So I've recorded a podcast outro to put on the end of my podcast, so that way I can just drop that in wherever I need it to be. All right, here's a multi, and I believe our zoom will allow us to grab a part, and then it will just go ahead and zoom what we have. Now, if you don't know where you are with your zoom, we do have some zoom buttons, zoom in, zoom out. We also, though, have these guys here are this guy here with the magnifying glass with the two arrows pointing in. This will zoom the whole wave to fit the screen. The other one next to it, if you highlight something and click this button, it gives us a zoom to put just what we had highlighted on the full length of the screen. I'm not sure what this double magnifying glass has done. Oh, that just toggles two different zoom sets we had. Okay. So there is Audacity. Other than that, there's really not a lot more to this. It's not as overly complicated as an application as one may think. Of course, if I highlight everything and rerun, the ACX will probably fail because of the last part I added. Let's go ahead and just have a look at that. I bet it's going to fail because you can kind of see this one here. Let's see. Oh, it does. It actually is meeting. I wasn't sure it would because the podcast outro, but I think I already have the podcast outro set to meet the requirements. I just wasn't sure for certain there. All right, so that is a brief overview of Audacity. Now, one more thing let's go ahead and mention here is I did talk about a few plugins that you want. There's actually a forum post directly on the Audacity's forum, which is called Audiobook Mastering. This is actually the thing that you want to read through if you are doing your own audiobooks or even podcasts. These aren't required for podcasts, but I make sure that all my podcasts and all of my audiobooks all meet the same file requirements. And the reason I do that is if somebody is listening to something produced in my office here, it always sounds the same and consistent. So this guy here will actually walk you through all of the settings, what they need to be done, and it will give you links to the two plugins that you need. You're going to need to download the ACX Check and the RMS Normalize. Then it gives you a few other items. Now, you do need to make sure you're using version 2.1.3 or later. One of them, I forget which plugin, or if it's both of them, will not work with a newer version. So those of you who are using older versions of Linux, probably you're going to want to pay attention to that. If you're downloading this now from the website on Windows or Mac, you're going to get the latest, so don't worry about it. Just if you're running Linux, you're going to need to make sure you have the latest version. Okay, so with that, you can kind of walk through here. They give you the three basic filters you do, the low cutoff for speech, the RMS normalize, and the limiter to get us down the settings that we need, and then it will walk you through all of the setups. So these guys here are the various things, and there's a various other items that you might encounter. And so there's some really nice stuff down here about setting up your studios and things like that. And I'll have my own take on these various videos and ideas in future videos on the channel. So anyway, have a look at these. I included all three of these pages in the links in the show notes here, so you can have a look at that. And with that, I hope that this will help you to get your writing done right.